silence of an autumn Italian morning broken by a large capacity V12 engine in what must be one of the most exciting cars this year. Not necessarily the most significant, but one of the most exciting cars this year, the Ferrari F12 TDF. TDF for Tour de France, after Ferrari's racing heritage. I've had my fast laps in this car, I won't lie to you. The idea is now we go out and do a little bit of tracking, a little bit of talking to camera. They're not necessarily expecting me to go very fast, but once we're out of sight, what they don't know doesn't hurt. So TDF, limited model, 799 they're going to make of these, which is 200 more than they made of the 599 GTO, but it's the same kind of thing. More power, more performance isn't enough, they say. So the weight is down by 110 kilos. There's lots of carbon fibre inside and outside. Power is up to 780 PS, because an F12 needed more produced, didn't it? Really. But anyway, it's got it. Terrific. And the most significant thing is what they call virtual short wheelbase, which is a slightly misleading thing. Basically, when they started developing this car, they put the rear tyres on the fronts to see how much more turning it would give it. They really wanted this sort of monumental front end with very little understeer. Not that an F12 has a lot of understeer in the first place from memory. And that makes the car feel like it's got a shorter wheelbase. It makes it feel like it's really agile, really spectacular. But it also makes it basically completely undrivable. So the virtual short wheelbase refers to what they've put on the rear wheels, which is rear steer. They steer in tandem with the front wheels. So they add this massive instability by putting much wider tyres on the front. And then they decrease some of that instability, work around it, by putting the rear wheel steer to make it work in tandem. It's a funny car to drive. Steering is the same as the standard F12, so it's very sharp. Still rear wheel drive. It's not the most naturally progressive car. The throttle response and the diff pushes the rear out. But that's when things start to happen with the back end. That's when the rear wheels start to go, and I think that's going to take a little bit of getting used to. But what it is, I mean, it is a phenomenal piece of kit. It is so fast in a straight line, as you would expect with 780 PS. I mean, it's just sensationally quick. Revs to 9,000, as you can probably hear that. It is an amazing motor. It's so nice to drive a big capacity V12 with no turbochargers. The response is utterly phenomenal. At times, almost too sharp. It's that brutal. You've got to be absolutely on it. Ferrari say this is not a car that you can jump in and drive easily. A 488 is actually. A 488 is incredibly docile. If you want to throw it around on the circuit, you can turn everything off and push it sideways in second and third gear like it's an MX-5. This is not the sort of car you're supposed to be able to do that with. It's a car you're supposed to get to know, take time to get to know. And if you've bought one, you are a Ferrari enthusiast. You've already got at least 5. So what about the rest of it? Well, springs are about 20% stiffer. You'll tell in the first metre, they said. It'll take you about a metre to discover that this is a much harder riding car than a standard F12. It's not that GT essence about it anymore. Has a little bit of sort of racing car feel about it, which is really, it's quite nice actually. It's quite nice. And I like the fact you've got to put the effort in. You've got to slightly understand the way it does things. It's funny, you've almost got to trust the fact that it goes very, very quickly, not overcorrect, and just stay really confident on the throttle. Not overconfident, because it will turn around quite quickly. I mean, it's a real joy actually when you get into its way of doing things. You drive it with less lock than you think, and more confidence than you think. It's a curious experience, but a really involving, really lovely, engaging one. Ferrari say that naturally aspirated V12 will probably last at least one more generation, hopefully more than that, because in a world of turbocharging and downsizing, Gordon Bennett, to get a lovely big motor like this, which is so strong and so loud, it's just when you're on the outside and they're going past, it sounds like an F1 car ought to. It's that kind of noise. It is just sensational. And I think if you had one, you'd end up wanting to drive it, wanting to learn it a lot. I'm damn sure I would.